Hi, Keith Smith here with Falmouth Outlook, and we're with Chris Lord from over down towards Louisville area. What county is it?
Trimble County.
Trimble County, from
We're up on
Trimble
the Ohio
County.
River.
Running for the Democrat seat of the 4th District for U.S. Congress. Has the primary coming up on May 22nd, and then the general election, which will be against Thomas Massey in the November election. Just wanted to sit down with her, have some time to introduce herself to our readers in the Pendleton County, as well as have a good conversation about our country. Does that sound good?
Yes.
All right. Well, the first question we kind of wanted to start with was, I was looking it up this morning, and this seat has been held by a Republican for the last 13 years.
Yes.
In Pendleton County, kind of the Republicans have won several elections
Yes.
recently. So there's something about the Democrat message or something going on there that's just not been resonating for the last 13 years with the voters of Pendleton County. Wanted you, two-part question. One, what do you think that is? And then how are you the person for the voters to see this is the message that they want to vote for?
Well, as far as what the DNC is doing, I'm not exactly certain. I don't think it's really at our level, basically. The Democratic Party, each county's party, are pretty involved. They really are. I have met some excellent people through my journey during this. So I do hope to keep in contact with them, just because they are a wealth of information. But as far as, like the state KDP, they have some new leadership in, and they're younger blood than previous generations. So I'm pretty excited about where they're going to be leading us to. So hopefully we'll be able to see the turnaround that we all know we want to see. The reason I'm running is quite simple. I have never had someone speak for me in local or state or federal levels. I am on the fringe. I'm literally hanging on by a thread to stay out of the poverty level. I drive a 2003 Ford Windstar. Have had to replace the engine and the transmission both in it. My husband drives a 1994 Ford F-150.
And you know what, there's a lot of voters out there that people in DC don't know about having to replace a transmission or an engine in a car.
Yes.
They would go buy a new one.
Yes.
But many of us, I've done both too, put an engine and a transmission, and they don't understand that.
No, the van when I bought it had a book value of like $37,500, which is $3,750 roughly. It was higher miles, so the Kelley Blue Book actually went down on it some. But I bought it for $500. Sold my '91 Toyota Previa that my husband totaled for $300. So I only paid $200 for the van. But the bought it with a blown motor in it for $500, and I put a used motor in it for right under $1,000. So I was still under book value, even after putting the engine in it. And then my transmission blew out a little over a year ago. It was right after Christmas. Not this Christmas, but the previous Christmas. And it blew the transmission out the 27th of December.
So you really feel like, you're living the day-to-day decisions that the middle class and even below the middle class that are going through.
Yeah, I was a teenage mom. I had my first daughter at 17. Was married before my senior, I got married between my junior and senior year, had my oldest daughter. My senior year in high school, came back from maternity leave the day of our midterm finals. I was nowhere near prepared for the midterm, so they actually gave me a leeway on those. I didn't take those until I came back from Christmas, just because I hadn't been in class. I was doing all the homework and whatnot, but I wasn't in class, so you don't always pick up everything. So, I worked my entire senior year of high school. I was working anywhere from 30 to 50 hours a week. I didn't make it to school a whole lot. I do have my diploma. I had to go to summer school to get it, but I did get it. And then I did put myself through college after I separated from my husband at that time.
Well, what are you doing now? You went to college. Where did you go to college?
Ivy Tech.
Ivy Tech. And majored in?
Business administration.
Business administration, and so where has that led you to now?
I actually went into the corporate sector for a while. Did not like it, just because of the simple fact that corporations have this ideal where they are the penultimate and you're simply a number to them. I have never agreed with that. You know, you are the business's biggest asset, always have been and always will be. If they cannot pay you enough to purchase their products, then they really don't deserve you, basically. I have always believed very strongly in that, and when I went into the corporate sector, that was what they pushed big, was that these people were just numbers. Do not treat them like people. And it's like, I'm sorry, but this may be their job, but thank them, appreciate them, let them know how valuable they are to you, because without them, you are nothing.
Gotcha.
And it was I just really was not happy with it. So, after I got fired from that job for a long story, maybe one of these days I'll get into it, but, I don't know, I didn't work for a while. And then when I went back to work, I picked up a job, because I'd had 2 subsequent kids since then. Well, I actually have 4 kids of my own, and my husband has 1 of his own. So, I had 2 kids, and then went to work and worked a piddly job that didn't really pay me what I was worth, just so that I didn't have to send my kids to daycare, because daycare is outrageous. And when you work for minimum wage, you can't pay daycare. So I worked an off shift compared to what my husband was working at the time, just so I didn't have to pay daycare. And then quit that, and then went to work for my dad for a while. In business, of course. I was office manager. And then after that, I became a stay-at-home mom, and that's where I've been for a really long time. I've been a stay-at-home mom. It allowed me to volunteer for various different extracurricular activities, because in our county we're kind of, we don't have a whole lot of money. So a lot of our extracurriculars are, the school can only pay a small percentage of what it costs to do them, so in order for the school to do them, it requires a lot of parent volunteers. So I spent a lot of time volunteering for the marching band, the tennis, beta club, all kinds of stuff.
Again, instead of somebody, a lot of times it's used that the representatives should listen to the people they represent. You've lived it, you don't just have to listen to it, you lived it. So you can empathize and know what they're talking about.
Yes, and I can understand where they've been. I mean, no, granted, not everyone's perspective is identical. So yes, perspective is a bonus. I like to see other people's, what they've had to go through, because everybody is different. We've all had different trials and tribulations, but we have all persevered and we have all made it. It will take you 20 years of nothing ever going wrong for you to dig yourself out of poverty, no question asked. And that means no missed days of work, no kids sick, no accidents. I'm one slight accident away from just total and utter financial ruin. But yet I'm still financing my own campaign.
Yeah.
Because I feel strongly about this.
Gotcha.
So we've, cut back our expenses just so that I can have the money to do this. Because I feel this strongly about it.
Cool. And I'm sure some of the questions we have, we'll get into some things that you'll feel very, very strongly about.
Yes.
One of the questions that, it's talking about the political culture today. It's just not a positive culture nationally. You have the Republicans who want to scare voters by saying George Soros and Saul Alinsky is creating this radical country.
Yeah.
You have the Democrats saying the Koch brothers are using all their money to creative things. It's just a horrible political culture that we're in right now. And kind of a two-part question, how can we ever get out of this?
Well, the Koch brothers are indeed funneling a slew of money into their ALEC. That is their brainchild. And if you take a listen to a lot of Republicans, you will listen and hear nearly verbatim what ALEC tells them. I'm not allowed to touch state with a 10-foot pole, but yeah, there's a lot going on currently, even in our state and nationally, that is verbatim from the ALEC. Well, it's not really the ALEC, it's ALEC.
But don't we have that going on both sides? I mean, I know they talked about with Obama and Saul Alinsky that both sides are doing this.
Yeah, but honestly, I have not felt the the push per se from you have to toe this line. We will not accept anything less than.
Okay.
You know, they have been very open. They have been very accepting of me in the Democratic county parties, and all the Democratic executive committees. They've been very accepting. They've been very open and been very honest. I am not your stereotypical politician. I myself even get annoyed with the standard double talk that politicians do. I don't like it. That's putting it politely. So I've tried to, you know, cater my campaign to what I want to see happen. I want to see the change, so therefore I have to do the change. So that's, you know, that's kind of been my blueprint basically, is just to be the change that I want to see happen. It will be a long, hard slog because we are very, very far from the center now. If you take a look at the history of this country, we have only ever really moved forward by leaps and bounds when we've had progressives running, when we've had progressives pushing the envelope. I mean, what was our founding fathers at that time? Were they not progressive? They were incredibly progressive. I mean, there was, at that point in time, you know, you had so many things running against our founding fathers, but yet they still did it. That's a very forward-thinking, very progressive attack point. You know, they're going forward. They're going to make it or break it. And then, of course, you know, we had FDR who implemented Social Security, Medicaid. You know, and then, of course, all the unions that have, you know, pushed and pushed and pushed for years and decades to get us safer working conditions. You know, that's very forward-thinking. That's very progressive. But we're so far to, you know, the opposite of that with a lot of the people in Washington right now that it's going to be a long, hard slog to pull us back out of it and to start moving forward.
Okay. Got a two-part question again that one of our readers had sent in. What are two issues you currently agree with the legislation and policy of our president, and two issues you disagree with?
I honestly can't say that there is anything that I really agree with him on. Yeah, you know, I've been pretty well focusing on my own campaign, so there may be something that has, you know, that I've not heard of that he's done that I would have agreed on. Well, I do agree with him telling Senate and Congress in general that they do need to do something about DACA. They have been putting it off, but him canceling DACA I don't think was the right way to go about it because it threw a lot of turmoil into a lot of people's lives that didn't really need it. It was very evil-spirited, I guess you could say. I just felt that it was very...
Well, he didn't technically cancel it. It had an expiration date, and he declined to renew it.
Right.
Yeah.
But that was actually the expiration date to make Congress actually do something about it, but they still didn't want to. So.
And that's kind of what, those kind of things is kind of what spurred you into wanting to be a member of Congress, to actually do things.
Honestly, my first granddaughter was born the day Trump was elected. And I'm sitting here and I'm holding her and I'm like, what have I handed her? You know, it never really clicked with my kids. You know, I seen it falling and failing and just going downhill, but it never really clicked until I'm holding this little bitty newborn going, what have I done? I have done absolutely nothing. That was kind of my kick in the booty. I mean, it was just, I don't know, I couldn't fathom her growing up in a country that was like this.
Gotcha. Two areas you disagree with him?
Removing all the water, air, and ground pollution controls that were put in. It's not costing corporations money to keep themselves clean. They've already put forth the money. Now in order to rip it all out, it's going to actually cost them money. That was something that never should have been done. And then of course leaving the climate accord in Paris Climate Accord. We cannot continue, you know, turning our noses up to green energy. If we want to be one of the movers and shakers in it, we need to step up and we need to get into it now. China is currently decades ahead of pretty much everyone else in leading, you know, the green energy movement. I mean, they powered their entire country for 7 days straight. on a solar grid that was floating in a bay. Like really, they covered their entire country. How many people do they have in that country? A lot more than what we have here, I believe. But they managed to power their entire country on that. They shut everything down.
Wow. Follow up on that question, somebody had sent in a question about the coal industry, which you kind of alluded to with the removal of the EPA guidelines. What is your, we've already kind of gave your stance on the removal of artificial restrictions and about promoting the coal industry that benefits Kentucky throughout the world to better benefit Kentucky as well as make the country more energy independent by relying more on coal.
Well, honestly, coal is currently selling for $45 a ton. $45 a ton. I really do not see it. And that's the clean coal. That's supposed to be the more expensive coal. I really do not want to see what the dirty coal is selling at because it's probably like a half that price easy. Honestly, the people that have worked in the coal industry have a valuable asset of knowledge that they have gained, and they have learned so much while doing it. We can, move them into the energy sector, into the green energy sector. There are so many jobs currently that are not being fulfilled in that. And honestly, I really think that it wouldn't take much for them to be able to move into a job that's more stable, better money. Most of the green energy companies in this country are union, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon. It took a pretty good hit on the nose when that 30% tariff was implemented on green energy in the country. But as long as we can keep fighting back against that, I honestly see it as moving along faster than trying to re-implement coal. Coal only runs for so long in a mountain before it runs out. And I know a lot of them have shut down because they're out of coal. They can't mine any more coal.
Okay.
So, instead of trying to, route them all over the country, let's open up job opportunities for them, in different sectors. It may not be, what you've always done, but we can get you a job in a different field.
Okay. There's been discussion recently about the third trimester abortions. What's your position on that?
Third trimester abortions only occur when the mother is going to die.
So I'm assuming from that, you're supportive of that being legal? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Well, it's either, try to save the fetus, which if it's going to kill the mother, chances are the fetus is not going to survive, or, save the woman.
Okay.
What's the choice?
Gotcha. Somebody had sent that in. I'm asking. Individually, we all strive to balance. You've talked about finances personally. We all try to balance our budgets. Even though people, they say, well, I have to live on a balanced budget. We don't live on balanced budgets. We get car loans, home loans, but we get those within our reason. It seems like our United States government does not do that. We spend tremendously amount more money than we take in. So as a representative going into DC, how do you work on getting to a balanced budget?
Well, here's the thing. They removed the gold standard. Our money flow is now based upon what the government will print. It is not based upon the gold standard any longer, which was in place until, I want to say 1935, 1937. So it was way back in the 30s. We've been almost 100 years off the gold standard now. So there is no real stop to the money, basically. It will continue until the government just feels like not printing it any longer. 21 trillion in debt. I don't know, that's just, it's an astronomical amount of money. And I really don't know how it occurred. I do know it was a very slow wind up, and then all of a sudden, because of inflation, it is like ramping up much faster. So balanced budget would be interesting because we would certainly have to look at the expenditures, the large expenditures. Like 54% of our budget is going to the military expenditure level. And then of course we've got, I'm try not to go too fast, so you can
I'm
break.
fine, I'm good. I'll be able to go back to the video too.
But we got, the 54% that's being spent on the military right now. And then, of course, we've got all the tax breaks and all the tax and, all the tax removals that they have done. Okay, when this country actually had the money to back up what it said and we didn't have to rely on borrowing money, was when we actually had an effective tax rate on corporations. We do need to return to that.
So what do you envision? If you were involved in kind of shaping the tax code, what would you envision it be? Like in the last presidential election, on the Republican side, there was a lot of discussion on flat taxes. And I made the point a lot of time with our tax system, the people who get rich a lot of times on our tax system is the tax accountants who are hired by the wealthy to say, get me out of these.
Yes.
And they find the loophole. So
Yes.
how would you structure a tax system that it can produce the revenue we need, as well as being fair to however it needs to be fair?
Okay, well, I will admit I have not really delved into thinking about taxes on people per se. I've been concentrating more on the corporations. I'm still trying to sort out how I want to put down for the personal taxes. But as far as businesses go, corporations, 80% tax, right, because this is going to be kind of long. 80% tax rate. And then, in order to get them to be more susceptible to other things that we would like to see happen, I will start giving them tax deductions. Like 5% tax deduction if they unionize. 5% tax deduction if they give a full 6 months maternal and paternal leave with pay. And honestly, I mean, we could look at, 70 to 75% pay instead of a full salary. Because they won't have to replace people to work during the time frames. But that's still open for negotiation. And then, of course, if they increase the minimum wage, the minimum starting higher pay, if they increase it to the minimum of $15 an hour or higher, 5% if they do $15 an hour, more up to 10% if they will go higher on the pay scale. Now remember, profit, if whatever they spend out of their profit doesn't get taxed anyway, so they're going to be getting the tax reduction, plus they're going to be getting a tax break for doing these things. And it might actually push them more forward to wanting to embrace more things. And then in the long run, because there'll be more money flowing out to the local economies, you'll start seeing, businesses picking up, like my area, we only survive on, when people come to visit for, like the regatta, the parade, the ramp up to regatta, basically. That does bring a good bit of money into our economy. And then, of course, we've got the fair and, other little things that can bring money into it. But that's the only time we actually go into the black and not stay in the red as far as income goes.
As a representative, one of the things that's kind of increased the deficit spending that goes on in DCs is that there's, whatever 400 and some representatives, or whatever there is, there's a bunch of them.
It's 430, somewhere right in
like
there.
that. But every one of those are looking to take projects back to their communities to help support their communities. And so as those, and I guess it's been called earmarked and just different things. So how do you balance knowing that you need to balance the budget, but at the same time, you want projects coming back to your district that's going to benefit the people in your district?
That is actually a very hard thing to balance between the two. I want to bring district forward to be a beacon. I want us to be the forefront leaders in, implementing, a lot of stuff across the board, including community love, I guess you could call it. I want, our individual little communities, excuse me, to be able to shine on their own, and to pull people in to come visit them. But that requires money. But at the same time, if you look at, wage increases across the board for everyone, I'm not just talking about minimum wage increase. When the minimum wage goes up, everybody else's wages have to go up as well. And it's not going to be close at 5 o'clock today, your wages are this, you open the next morning at 8 o'clock, this is where your wages are going to be at. No, because supply side demand says that not everything can take the full brunt at the same exact time. It has to be staggered down the line.
It is me, yes.
So honestly,
That's awesome.
if we could get enough local economy money flowing, we may not have to use as much earmark money.
Gotcha.
Hoping.
So what's your stance on, or I guess better, not stance, but what would you think we need to do on immigration? You mentioned DACA earlier, that you were supportive in passing, that Congress needs to pass.
Congress needs to.
And handle DACA.
Yeah.
So that's obviously one thing, but beyond that, what else does need to be done on immigration?
Okay, well, the,
And let me say, this should be illegal immigration. I think everybody's supportive of immigration in general. It's more the conversation that's going on now in the country's more addressing illegal immigration.
Okay, well, illegal immigration really isn't such a thing. They're undocumented immigrants. They're in the system, but they're really not in the system. When they cross the border points or when they fly in, and granted, very few actually cross the borders physically, most of them fly in. They are, they're in immigration databases. But the problem is, once their visa expires, getting into the system to actually file your paperwork is near impossible. It really honestly is. It requires an immigration attorney, and immigration attorneys are not cheap. And that's only because they know how to work all the paperwork. The filing fees themselves are not that expensive, but it's the cost of the immigration attorneys. It does cost a large chunk of money. Take that from personal experience.
So you're saying simplify the process for those who are wanting to come into the country?
Honestly, probably, yeah, because there is so many hoops you have to jump through. And if you literally forget to dot a single I or cross a single T, they will refuse your paperwork and they will make you refile full price again. You don't get, okay, well, we're sending this back to be fixed. No, they just flat out refuse it. You have to file again. So at, immigration filing fee for green card was $800 over 10 years ago. Yeah. Immigration attorneys, $1,800 a pop. So yeah, it's very costly. And that's what a lot of people don't really understand. When people come here, they don't always have the intention of staying. And then, some do. But we need to be able to make it so, they know that yes, they can file, even after they're here and undocumented.
Mhm.
They can still file and give them a route to know that they can do it.
Gotcha. One of the things candidate Trump at that time brought up for legislators was term limits. My understanding, he's kind of brought those back up this year as far as term limits for legislators. What do you think? So you've pledged this. So
Yes,
she
yes, I
has
have.
a U.S. Term Limits Amendment pledge, in which she pledges as a member of Congress, I will co-sponsor and vote for the U.S. Term Limits Amendment of 3 House terms and 2 Senate terms and no longer limit. So over this, that would be 6 years in the House, 12 years in the Senate, so the maximum a person would be able to do would be 18 years in
Well, the House
legislature.
is 3, so the House is 2, so that's.
No, that's 3. 3 House terms.
Yeah, that's 6 years.
6 years.
And then Senate is 6 years, so that's 12
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, so it would be a total of 18 that they would be able to
Yes.
serve in legislature to combine.
Yes, and then, and because currently we have people retiring from Congress who are turning into lobbyists. I double covered everything here. I find it. 7-year employment ban for firms that employ lobbyists.
Okay, all right. I want to write that down. Cool, thank you very much for that.
And then that one is actually quite large. This one here, the candidates with a contract actually states that if I fail to do what my contract says, all 5 pages, I must resign within 1 year. So, yeah, I've signed quite a lot of contracts. The contract for American Renewal, 6 months.
What's that?
6 months. And this actually follows my platform almost verbatim.
What do you mean 6 months of what?
If I fail to send these to the committee
Okay.
to see if they'll pass out of committee.
Oh, okay, so these are bills that you would look to send to committee for consideration by the
Yes,
House?
I already have over 60 bills wrote on my computer.
Wow. What are some bills, what are some of the, out of those 60, what are some, if you want to just give us a handful of ones that, obviously you're passionate about all of them, but what are some that just jumps out at mind?
Well, all three of my contracts state overturn Citizens United. The American Promise says overturn Citizens United via 28th Amendment is the only 28th Amendment that I agree with. There are several out there, but the only one that I agree with is overturning Citizens United.
What is Citizens United?
That is where the Supreme Court ruled that money was power,
Mhm.
and that corporations could funnel unlimited amounts of money into campaigns.
Gotcha.
So that's why we're seeing massive amounts of money being spent in campaigns, but I believe wholeheartedly in overturning Citizens United, so I make sure I covered my base with 3 contracts.
So your position would be, where the Supreme Court said that was legal, you feel like we have to change the amendment to make it constitutional where corporations cannot spend in the money and we
Right.
don't have this money driving the campaigns anymore.
Exactly. It's very much a pay-to-win mentality in campaigning,
Mhm.
and I don't believe in it, never have. So that's another reason why I'm self-funding.
How do you stop, and I don't disagree with you that, the amount of money that's driving campaigns is ridiculous. Let's say as an individual citizen, I wanted, and I was Bill Gates money. I wish I was Bill Gates money.
Yeah.
I'm
That would be
not,
nice, wouldn't it?
I'm not Fred Gates money, but anyhow, and I wanted to take my money and spend it to do the exact same thing, but it's just me spending it. Is there any way to stop or to prevent that from still occurring without it being corporations?
Actually, if you look at the FEC paperwork, anything up to $500 requires one set of paperwork filed. Anything from 5 to 1,000 requires another set of paperwork involved, and then anything above 1,000 up to 2,000 requires another set of paperwork. I believe 2,000 is the personal final limit
Gotcha.
that you can put into a campaign. Anything beyond that, the IRS gets a little eyeball-y over.
Gotcha. Okay.
But that's the way I understood it when I read all the tax codes for it and everything.
All right. This past week, actually last couple weeks, Mitch McConnell came out supportive of legalizing hemp. That for the longest time has been closely related to the marijuana issue. So where do you stand on legalization of hemp, on medicine marijuana, or recreational marijuana?
Honestly, hemp should have been legalized a very long time ago. It is a perfect crop to rotate out with tobacco. I know where I'm at, there's a whole lot of tobacco farms, and then of course when they have to do the crop rotation, they bring in soybeans, which doesn't make as much money from what I've heard. I don't know, I'm not a full-scale farmer, so I'm not really certain about that. 1,100 square foot garden plot, put my veggies on. But it does do really well with rotational crops with tobacco. It does well with pretty much anything that you grow yearly needs a rotational crop, just to replenish the stuff. Winter soybeans are a good one to use as well, but that requires an early harvest because they have to be in the ground kind of early. But yeah, hemp should have been legalized a long time ago because it makes so many products and we can cut out the deforestation.
Well, what about marijuana?
Medical marijuana, yes, it has been proven time and time again to cut down on the opioid use in this country. You can actually, opioids rewire the brain for the pain sensors. It literally will alter those permanently. It takes a very long time for them to unalter themselves once they have been altered. So pain will be a good part of time once you try to go off opioids. Pain is unbearable. Been there, done that. I have a permanent back injury. I was on opioids for it for a while, and the pain was worse after I went off of the opioids than what it was when I was on them or before them, just because of the way it alters your pain receptors. But pot has been proven that it doesn't do that.
Gotcha.
It will curb the pain without rewiring anything. So, yeah, and it's literally not even a whole lot that you need, and it will curb the pain for a very long time. Medical marijuana is the same way. You know, we've got Lou Gehrig's disease, which is MS. It can curb the tremors from that. Parkinson's, it does the same thing with Parkinson's. It curbs the tremors. it can, it stops the pain production. And it is
What about
not-
recreation?
and honestly, we should legalize that one too.
Okay.
The war on drugs has failed and has been failing for a very long time, and it is time to stop it. Addiction for the harder drugs, a lot of the other Schedule I drugs, aside from pot, I don't understand why they ever put that one on there because it's not a psychoactive drug, never has been. But a lot of the Schedule I's are psychoactive drugs, which means they alter your reality.
Gotcha.
But treating addiction and throwing someone in jail is counterintuitive to what needs to occur. So we do need to look at revamping the judicial system for that. And that's quite an involved process. That's on my website, by the way. I have been slowly filling it in as far as, taking it from my notes into, print that people can read and understand. But I do believe wholeheartedly in taking the war on drugs out and start treating addiction correctly. Jail time does not get them treatment. It is actually counterproductive to treating addictions. It's no different than treating an alcoholic.
Gotcha. Of course, here in the state of Kentucky, the last 3 months, education has been forefront. What do you think the federal government's role in education should be?
Education is actually a guaranteed right in this country, has been for a very long time. That's why the Department of Education was created, was to ensure that every child had an education. And then, of course, it goes back to the United Nations rights that we signed. I don't remember what the name of that one's called. I can't remember off the top of my head. But there was a thing that we signed a very, very, very long time ago, right around the end of World War II, 1941, I think it was.
Are you talking about the Geneva Convention?
I think it was the Geneva Convention, but I don't know. I know it was the Paris. We were in Paris when we signed it.
Okay.
But it does state that education is a right in this country, and that contract is actually enforceable as well. There's a whole lot of stuff in there that people have forgotten. It's interesting to read to see where we have failed. But education is a right in this country, and charter schools are not fulfilling that right because they do not take children who are non-conforming. You may have an incredibly gifted child, but if they have behavior disorders or any other fun little quirks that highly gifted children have, charter schools don't want them. They want people that are put in these little cattle rows to just shoot them straight through there. They don't want anyone that's going to rock the boat, per se. But the Department of Education has clarified that the children who are in special education do get an actual education as well. So charter schools refuse to take the children.
Now, on the charter schools issue, of course, that has been a big point here in Kentucky as well as nationally. How's that balanced with the thought that in President Obama's education plan, he actually put charter schools into play?
Yes.
He created charter schools and was using them as a means to better some of the larger cities that he felt like the school systems were not doing.
Well, okay, the charter schools that Obama was actually looking at were the Montessori schools. Have you ever heard of those?
Mm-hmm.
They are kind of out of the norm as far as education goes. The kids are kind of all meshed together. The older kids, work with the younger kids, and it's honestly a very great aspect and a great idea to use. But that's what charter schools originally were. They were very much Montessori-based schools, which was open curriculum, learn at your own pace type things. Charter schools, not so much anymore. There are a few charter schools that are still doing really well with the Montessori outlook, but a lot are more for-profit now, meaning they're trying to profit off of our children and their education. But the charter schools, the majority of charter schools do not hire teachers that are accredited. They do not even have to, all they have to have is a college education, or not even need a college education, they just need a high school diploma. I'm sorry, but why would I want someone here to do this when I've got a person in a master's degree over here who has spent at least 6 years in college, if not more? But yet,
Gotcha. Okay. Going on, what do you believe the Second Amendment, what rights do you believe the Second Amendment guarantees us?
Scalia has already covered this.
Who?
Justice Scalia.
Okay.
There was a ruling in 2004. He has said numerous times that it is not open-ended, meaning that, just because you want it doesn't mean that it's right. I don't know, it's really hard to explain because he used a lot of legalese in it. So I'm trying to break it down to more. It was long. It was like, I don't know, over 40 pages long for the brief. It was a very long brief. But it essentially stated that the way the Second Amendment is worded means that we can, without a doubt, be able to regulate and implement safety guidelines. And he basically put that out there. It is open to being regulated. It's not,
On his brief, was his brief that was written there, was it part of the majority opinion
Yes.
that was departed? Okay.
yes, because it did pass 5-4.
Okay.
Cornell Law actually has it,
Okay.
if you want to read it.
So what kind of regulations do you think would you support in Congress?
Well, currently, as it stands now, I think it's called the NCIS or NCS. It's the national database.
Okay.
Not every state currently accesses it, nor allows it to be used in their state.
Are you talking about for background checks? They
Yes.
don't? Okay.
Which is why some states you can actually get a background check done in 15 minutes? 3 days at the max. That's how long it takes to get a credit check done.
Are you saying you for a 3-day or how
Longer.
much longer?
I actually want a TWIC card.
What's that?
It's an acronym, and I don't remember what TWIC stands for, but I'll look it up for you real fast. I do know what it is. It is it is a federal level background check, and the people who use, they go to fuel dispensaries, that's where the tankers go in to pick up gas to all the local gas stations. Then type it'd be a miracle. We not only use the, you can use my phone.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
I'm battling the root canal,
Oh, yeah.
so.
Yeah, I've got a few of those that I need to have done too. It's an incredibly long process. It takes 6 to 8 weeks. Hopefully we can get that sped up a little bit. But it does countercross with the terrorist watch list.
Okay.
I don't like the 6 to 8 weeks that it takes.
Think it should be shorter?
Honestly, I think it should. But, if we open it up, maybe, more people using it, it may actually speed up the process a little bit more.
Gotcha.
Because right now, unless you have a job at the ports, and we're talking like the big shipping ports, Wick uses that. And then we've got Jiminy Crickers, I just lost them all. Fuel dispensaries, anybody that drives a tanker truck. Jet fuel is stored on the fuel dispensaries as well. So even the people that work at the fuel dispensaries, they have to have TWIC cards as well. We have the ports, we have the barges, the oil barges, people that work on the oil platforms. It's already quite large anyway, so why not open that up to use it? Because with it being a much larger federal database, terrorist watch list, no-fly list, domestic violence charges, it does pull up against the any and all police reports, regardless if the charges have been dropped, it's still on there. And then they will clarify for that. It's not just an automatic kick out, you just verify things. And it's done by biometric scan, which means they use your fingerprint. So you literally just go doot, and it's all done. Then you wait for your report to come back. And as far as I understood, that my husband was not the only one that got the TWIC card. They ran mine as well,
Okay.
because I am in the house. So,
Gotcha. Well, the last question I have for you is one that you can't have an election anymore without a discussion on. What about health care?
I believe in Medicare for all and taking for-profit out. Up until Nixon, it was actually illegal to profit off of healthcare. And then Nixon decided that his little friend in, I think it was Humana at the time, I don't know, Humana and Blue Cross Blue Shield went through so many transformations and so many cells. It's hard to keep track of who started where, but it was one of the main people, one of the main healthcare companies at that point in time. And I'm thinking it was Humana, but they wanted it opened up to for-profit. So if you take a look at the price tag of what stuff was in the 70s versus what it is now, we're up like 4 digits percentage-wise. Up until the ACA was implemented, we were seeing almost a 10% markup every single year for our healthcare costs, including our premiums. You pay out the nose for your premiums, and then you have your deductibles on top of that, $4,000 for individuals, $8,000 per family. Some are higher, some are lower. And then you've still got your co-pays at the doctors. You've still got your co-pays for all your stuff. And then you still got your pharmacy that you have to go pay for as well. So, by the time you take all that out, we're out like almost $20,000 a year in healthcare. When I broke my ankle, I paid more than the insurance company paid. Like, seriously? So here's the name, here's what TWIC stands for, Transportation Workers Identification Card. Credential.
Okay, got it.
I knew it was an acronym, I couldn't remember the long name for it. But I don't know, just making sure that everyone has equitable health care. Equitable? I don't know what it's pronounced. I lived in Scotland for 6 months. And I had the NHS over there. I ended up having to have an emergency C-section. I got no bill, none whatsoever, because of their NHS program. It paid for it. I stayed at 2 separate hospitals too. And I mean, it was excellent care. It really was.
Well, in just a little bit underneath 3 weeks, actually 4 weeks, no, 3 weeks, Pendleton County voters will be going in and casting their ballot. As they walk into that voting booth, what do you want them to think about when they see your name on the ballot?
Just the fact that I'm not doing this to make money. I'm doing this to be the voice for those of us that have not had a voice for a very long time. I'm very much a progressive candidate, so hopefully when things come push to shove, instead of pushing further and further past the center point to the far right, we can stay a little bit more off to the left instead of the center, because that's the only way we're going to continue to progress in this country. I am very much pushing for major changes, and it's going to take a very long time, don't get me wrong. This is not something that we can just do overnight, but I really do want to push for forward thinking instead of regression.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming to Fountain.
Well, thank
Hopefully, you had a nice, at least coming cross country, you had some beautiful landscape
It is
to go past.
honestly.
It's a beautiful day too.
Yes, and every time I drive out through here, it's like, wow, it is so pretty. I live up on Milton Hill, and it's kind of like flat. So when I get to come off the ridge, it's kind of nice.
I like the peaceful and the quietness of the country landscape.
It is. It's really nice and quiet.
Well, make sure you come back and see us here in Pendleton County again. Good luck at the end of May.
Okay.
And once we have everything situated out, we want to kind of revisit with the 2 candidates, Massey and whoever comes out of the Democrat side in the fall. But good luck in your election. And
Well,
thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, that was fun. Oh, man.